Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. All right, so this is a wild one that just popped up. I can't say it's unexpected because part of me expected something like this to pop up, especially with all the jobs popping up and with this individual's track record. But Deion Sanders, who's already been rumored for the Rams job, is more closely rumored to be a candidate. I believe he interviewed, like that's the report that he's going to interview or that he's been requested to interview for the Dallas Cowboys job. So it's not just hypothetical anymore. Deion is in the head coaching cycle for the NFL this year. And that brings a ton of interesting connections with this draft, specifically that not just features one of Deion's sons, but two of Deion's sons, and another one that he claims as just like a son in Travis Hunter. So very interesting year for Deion Sanders to decide that he's interested in taking a job in the NFL. Very interesting that it is the Dallas Cowboys opportunity that pops up. Also very interesting that it just happens to be how the Cowboys job opens up, right? Where they decided that they were going to stick with Mike McCarthy, and then negotiations got to a point where they didn't want to stick with him, and now the job's opening up late for the Dallas Cowboys. And also, if Deion Sanders does get a job with his alma mater, I guess it's an alma mater when he used to play there too, Dallas Cowboys, if he gets a job there, what does that do for the Browns' chances to trade their number 2 overall pick? Does that open up somebody like Dak Prescott? Because that's the first assumption I've seen, is that Deion's going to take that job. Deion's going to clear house. He's going to get rid of Dak Prescott. He's going to go out and get Shedeur Sanders. And father and son going to roll in the NFL. And I've said this before. I don't think Deion taking a job in the NFL would be the worst thing for Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur is somebody who has played within the structure of what Deion Sanders has provided and literally gone out of his way to create his entire football career. You go back to Prime Academy in high school, Jackson State, Colorado, and potentially now the NFL. Deion's coaching career directly tracks him coaching his son as the quarterback of whatever football team that his son is on. His ambitions don't seem to be far outside of that, which is why I was skeptical of this ideal of him staying at Colorado. Now, that still might be the case, but it seems like Deion's ambitions to be a coach started with his son and have followed his son every step of the way. That's just the truth. He did not want to be a coach before his son became a prominent quarterback on the scene. He did not want to be a coach until his son became a high school player. He started coaching when his son got there. Not to say that he didn't do some small coaching on the side, but as far as head coach stuff goes, that exclusively follows the path of his son. So if you follow those tea leaves, you would think he's trying to draft his son. They're going to trade Dak Prescott. Now the question becomes, if they want to trade Dak Prescott because they got Deion Sanders and Deion's running the show, and if you get Deion Sanders, there's an element of letting him run the show that you're going to let him do, then what does that do to Dak Prescott? He now becomes available. Now Dak's 32 years old, no spring chicken, like not super young. He has had a lot of injuries. I believe he's coming off another season-ending injury. And you could probably shop him to a team, and they would be interested. But the issue with Dak is that he's going to be expensive. And not just that it's going to be expensive for the team that brings him on, which it won't be that expensive because the Cowboys are going to have to eat a lot of the guaranteed money in that contract before they trade Dak because that contract's relatively new. It's going to be expensive for the Cowboys to trade Dak Prescott. I don't have the number off the top of my head, so let me try to pull it up right now. But I believe the number would accelerate if they wanted to trade Dak Prescott. It would be before the draft about $100 million in dead money would accelerate to 2025 if they wanted to trade Dak Prescott, which would mean his cap number for 2025 would be 103, 216, 667. So they're not going to trade him before the draft. I don't think trading Dak is really on the table, period. But if they were to trade Dak, they're definitely not going to do it before the draft. They would probably do it post June 1st, where the cap number goes down to 42, and you could spread the cap hit over a couple of years, right? It'll get to 61 in 2026, and then so on and so forth. So that is when the Cowboys would be likely to trade Dak. But that's problematic, right? Because if you're the Cowboys, you want to trade Dak Prescott, it's because you're trying to angle that into some way to get draft ammunition to either trade up to the top 5 to get whoever you want. Now, I think there's a question of like if Deion had to choose between Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, who would he pick? Now, the football guy in me is like, hey, he would obviously go Travis Hunter, because that's the one that's what makes football sense. Travis Hunter is the player that you need. If you go to Dallas, they have a quarterback in Dak Prescott. There's really no reason to move heaven and earth to get somebody that you're not even sure is going to be better than Dak Prescott. But you have to factor in that this is this man's son, right? This is not just any prospect. This is this man's son, and a son that he so clearly loves so much that he has been willing to pursue an entire coaching career to support. And that's admirable, man. Like, say what you want about Deion Sanders and say what you want about how he left Jackson State and everything that he's done at Colorado. And if you don't like the hype, if you do like the hype, I don't really care one way or the other about Deion. But I do think that's kind of respectful, like that he was willing to pursue a whole career to support his child. There's a lot of rich folk that don't do that for their children, that have the opportunity to do stuff or be supportive in that way for their children. So like, shout out to Deion, because that's W support stuff there. We call him helicopter parent, all this other stuff, try to paint it like a negative. But, you know, I would be glad if my parents decided to support me in that same way, or had the opportunity to support me that way and follow through on it. So, you know, shout out to Deion with that, because he has done a good job. Shedeur Sanders, when he came into college, was a 3-star prospect and was not somebody who was seen as a draft pick. He is now in the conversation for being the first quarterback taken off the board. So say what you want, and there's a lot to say about Deion, good and bad. His support of his son has been a successful endeavor. So it would make sense that he would want to continue this in the NFL. And again, I'm looking at this like there's no guarantee that his son going to be better than Dak Prescott, but that ain't my child. Okay? That is his child. He probably has a stronger belief in him than anybody. This is where it circles back to the Browns. Because no, I'm going to just say it right now. People are going to tell you that the Browns could trade for Dak Prescott. That's not going to happen. The Browns are not going to be able to trade for Dak Prescott unless the Cowboys are willing to take like $150 million against the cap to make it easier for the Browns to trade for Dak Prescott. As it speaks right now, he's just too old and his contract is too expensive for the Browns to take on at this current point in time, where they're still trying to figure out how they're going to get rid of the Watson contract. It's not an option for the Browns. Dak Prescott gets traded. He's definitely going to go to Tennessee. He's definitely going to go to Oakland. Well, not Oakland. I'm old. He's definitely going to go to the Las Vegas Raiders, right? One of those other teams that need a quarterback, not necessarily the Cleveland Browns, because we're just not in a position to receive Dak Prescott. And I'm going to be honest with you, the last thing we need to do is trade for another big money quarterback that wears the number 4. Like, I don't know. Just don't feel great to me. Y'all tell me what y'all think about that, but don't feel great to me. Especially when you still owe that quarterback a decent amount of money. Now, the injury stuff might make this a lot easier for the Cleveland Browns because they will save a good amount on their cap for 2026, but still, I don't think this is setting you up for the best success to trade for Dak. But what it does, if you're the Cleveland Browns, is it puts you in a position to make a move for that trade up with the Cowboys that could haul a ton of picks, right? You could get a reverse Herschel Walker situation. And my one issue with like the trade back stuff that people have been pulling out is I've been wondering, where is that leverage going to come from, right? Everybody's been talking about how the Browns are going to trade back and try to get 1 million picks for number 2. And my question has been, where's the leverage going to come from, right? I remember, and this was the NBA, it's a little bit different than the NFL, but I remember when the Cavs had the number 1 overall pick in 2013, everybody's like, we're going to trade it. We got to trade it. We got to trade it. But if nobody wants to pick that badly, then what you going to trade it for? A bag of chips? You know, like, you got to have a real option here. So if you have potentially the leverage of Deion Sanders wanting to trade up for his pride and joy, his son, his blood, in Shedeur Sanders, a man that he has literally pursued an entire career to support. You have leverage now. And look, I know everybody wants to see the nice father-son story. Maybe I'm a villain. I'm running up that price. The price of the brick is going up for number 2 if that becomes the case. Because if you want Shedeur, you're going to have to pay franchise quarterback prices for it. Even if I don't want to draft them, you're going to have to do it. And because I know you're going to go out your way to want your son, I might consider just drafting him just to make sure you give me the price that I want for that. And the reason I would consider doing that is because if Deion wants to coach his son, well, that's going to be expensive. Now, Deion could run the risk of his son falling to wherever the Cowboys are picking, which I don't think is like a wild possibility, but I want to say it's super likely and just play the odds where they are. But if you want to guarantee it, well, you might have to get that number 2 pick. And you want the price for Shedeur Sanders going to come through Cleveland. Like, if that's what you want to do, if you want to take no chances, which I imagine, if you take a job to coach your son, you're going to want to take no chances that your son going to be there. Now, I also think if we're thinking about it through that lens, right? If I'm thinking about it through the lens of Deion wants to coach his son, either he has a reasonable amount of confidence that he's going to be able to land his son some way, somehow in the draft, or if I were Deion and I really, really wanted to coach my son, I would just wait until whatever team has your son and see if they fire the head coach of your son. And then boom, you're going to be one of the main candidates people going to want to bring in, especially if your son ain't having that hot of a start to his career. Also could be the case that Deion does not care about coaching his son as much as we're assuming, or at least I'm assuming, and he just takes the job because he would think it'd be cool to be the Cowboys head coach because, yeah, this career path might have started as a way to support his son, but maybe it turned into something bigger than that. I know some people have brought up the idea of maybe Deion getting his son to slip in the draft by demanding that other teams not take Shedeur or else he won't play for him. I would call that bluff so fast if I were another NFL team. Like, what the hell is Deion Sanders going to do to me if I draft this son? Like, seriously. Whenever I hear these takes about, oh, well, Deion's not going to allow a team to draft him. Well, because as far as I know, the draft works like this. If that dude's name's on the board and you have to pick, you could write his name on a card, turn it into the commissioner. Commissioner reads that pick, and then that team has that player's draft rights. Which means that if that player plays in the NFL, he has to play for that team. Now, that team could trade his draft rights, but there's nothing in there that says if a player does not want to get drafted to a team, he has the right to dissolve those draft rights. So what exactly is the plan, right? Everybody who tells me Deion going to stop this team from drafting this guy, okay, cool. But let's say Deion says you can't draft this son, and I just drafted his son, and I'm one of the teams he said can't do it. What's his son about to do? What's Deion about to do? Fight me? Tell us that his kid not going to play football for a year? Okay, do that. Do that. Don't play. Don't play football for a year. We wanted you to develop anyway, Shedeur. Get right. Don't play. Next year going to come around. You want to play? And let's be real. It's not even going to get to that point because he'll say he's not going to play, but June, July going to come around. Camp going to come around. He going to want to play. he going to be on that practice field, bro. I know everybody says that this happened with Eli Manning, but the only reason that the Giants were able to get Eli Manning away from the Chargers is because the Chargers liked Phillip Rivers just as much as they like Eli Manning. So when the Manning family came talking about you got to trade him, you got to do something about that. They said, cool, we'll take the extra picks and get this dude we like too. There's no situation like that in this year's draft. So the leverage to do anything like that is just not there. If somebody thinks that Shedeur Sanders is a franchise quarterback and they have to pick before Deion get the pick, and that is very likely that could be the case if any of these teams like Shedeur Sanders, then guess what, man? They gonna take him. They not gonna care if Deion say you can't do it. What Deion about to do about that? He got nothing. The way people talk about this, and like more annoyingly, the way the media reports this as if Deion is somebody who has the authority to pull through on this. And also, let's keep it real. These reports are usually garbage, dog. Like, these reports are coming from these garbage aggregate Twitter accounts that don't have any sources and just make shit up to get engagement on a regular basis. So it's not even guaranteed that these reports that you see on social media, oh, Deion doesn't want him playing for the Raiders. Deion doesn't want... It's a good chance that those reports are just fabricated. It's like somebody's opinion that they like phrase as a report to try to get more clicks to their website. It's trash, right? Like, I don't know why anybody's acting like he has the authority to do this, because Deion ain't even acting like he got the authority to do this. Like, he might puff his chest out on a Fox interview while he talking to Keyshawn Johnson, but look, bruh, we know who the number one pick or who has the number one pick. We know who has the number 2 pick. We know who has the number 3 pick. We know who has the number 4 pick. Why hasn't Deion come out and immediately announced that these teams are not eligible to draft their son if he had that kind of clout to make that move happen? The reason is he don't got it. That's why he ain't done it. Like, it's just pure social media garbage, right? Like, all of it is just social media garbage. And then the worst part is I see people getting mad at Deion about their team being cut out of conversations of having Shedeur Sanders because Deion said no. And I'm like, this didn't even happen. Like, and you're mad at Deion about it. Be mad at the person serving you the bullshit. My tangent aside, the Manning family couldn't even orchestrate it to where they could make Arch go to a specific team that they wanted to unless they entered him into the supplemental draft or something like that, right? Like, if Deion really cared that much about who's going to select this kid, especially he was going to try to put up a fight or veto, he would have had Shedeur try to enter the supplemental or something, somewhere where he can enter the draft with a bit more control. But the fact that he's in the regular draft means he gonna go where he drafted. Stop all of this, like, who's gonna allow Deion to... This is the biggest non-story of the year, man. I feel like I fall in a weird place when it comes to talking about Shedeur, because I don't want the Browns to draft him at number 2. But I don't think he's a terrible prospect. I just don't think he's a good enough prospect to go in the early part of the first round. I think he's somebody who fits better in the late first round, going to a team that has a quarterback. Like, honestly, if he fell to the Cowboys and Deion Sanders was the coach of the Cowboys, I think that would be the best situation for him to succeed. And I think you would get a good result out of that if you were the Dallas Cowboys. I think Deion coaching the Cowboys would be good for Shedeur Sanders. And I think Deion, there's a chance that could work in the NFL, given that he's Deion Sanders. And yeah, do we be talking to them kids kind of crazy? Sure, but he's Deion Sanders, and he has accumulated a level of clout in especially locker room culture that is going to allow him a little bit of leeway to act a little differently when it comes to how he talks to players. And I'm sure Deion, who's been a professional football player before, understands the dynamics difference between the NFL and college and is not going to cross lines that he knows need not to be crossed, right? Behind all the bravado, all the chains, all the sunglasses, all the stuff that people like make a big deal about Deion Sanders for, is a professional and a businessman. Don't get that part twisted. If you think Deion Sanders about to be up there acting a fool, you don't know Deion Sanders. Deion is a professional. Deion is a businessman. He will operate as such in the NFL. And that's kind of how his son operates. But if Deion does get desperate, if Deion does think to himself, I'm only going to take this Cowboys job if we can get that pick, and the Cowboys really want to get Deion Sanders, and they make the decision that they got to get the number 2 overall pick in order to do it, well, then the Browns should happily rob them. Like, happily hold them up and get it all. I'm talking about your first-round pick this year, a third-round pick this year, and give me your next 2 first-round picks. So I want 3 first-rounders. I want a third. I want a 5th. And you know what? Shout out to Kevin Costner. Give me your punt returner. Give me your damn punt returner too. We running it up, okay? We running it up. And then we're going to use some of that to move back up into the top 6 of this draft so we can get one of the guys that we covet. But, yeah, interesting stuff. Deion potentially taking the job at Dallas. Let me know what y'all think about that situation. Let me know what y'all think about how that could potentially impact the Cleveland Browns. And let me know if y'all think the price of the brick is going up for number 2. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.